Coach, can you talk about position groups or players, new, old, transfers that have impressed you, pleasant surprises?
Well, let me start with, you know, there's so many different people that are involved in the composition of this team. You know, so many guys that are coming in that are in the mix. That's good and bad news, obviously. And the good news is we got, you know, a bunch of good guys coming in. The bad news is, you know, you have to walk in the door and we have to get them ready to play in a month. And, you know, that's the catch-22 you're in. I'm gonna cite one of the players. I'll say two players. One of the new guys and one of the existing guys that has just done a wonderful job. Okay, you've all met Cassius Sendish. You know, we brought him to the media day. You know, we put him at this nickel position, but it's pretty obvious when we're out on the field that one of the people that stands out, both as a leader on the field and performer, has been Cassius. You know, it makes it more comforting for us because even though we practice him in the spring, you know, as we've tweaked the tempo of what we're practicing on defense, you know, when things are going high flying, people don't always have the same type of concentration because you have to think fast on your feet. And, you know, he's been a very, I wouldn't call it a surprise, but I'm very happy to see how that's going. It makes us know that we have a corner type guy who could rush the passer, drop in the zones, and also play man coverage in the nickel position. And to be honest with you, that position, you need to be able to do all those things. And you need to blitz some, you need to be able to cover, okay, and you need to, both in zone, and you need to be able to match up some man-to-man. Another guy who's really had just a wonderful camp is Brandon Berg. It's almost like a name that we don't ever talk about. You know, other than Tom, who's not here, wanting to move him to linebacker. You know, we don't ever talk about him because he's kind of been buried a little bit in the depth chart while he's here. Now you get buried because of your own play now, not for any other reason, because you know we're going to play the best guys. But we put him in this position behind Tony, and he has really thrived. He's been one of the. If we asked everyone to rate the best 5 players in camp, he'd be on everyone's list. Offensive coaches and defensive coaches will all put him on the list. So that's good. You know, that's good for us because he runs, he catches, he runs routes. He runs routes in the backfield. He runs routes out of the backfield. You know, it's really given us another guy that, you know, we really thought would be more of a backup guy, but now you're trying to find more ways to get him involved and get him on the field.
Coach, you got a lot of new personalities, like boisterous personalities. I'm just kind of curious, does that actually, in what ways does that help your job, and what ways does that actually make things more difficult at times? Kind of
on the field, I don't stifle personalities. You know, I like people to have personalities, and you know, I have my personality with you guys is way different than my personality in practice, and my personality in practice is way different than my personality for the games. You know, it's not, you know, there's different settings. You know, my thing with some of those guys has been well documented by a couple of them, is I try to teach them the right way of presenting themselves off the field. I don't care less if they're talking trash and all that other stuff. I don't mind that at all. Kind of like it a little bit, to tell you the truth. I always like those type of players, but in the meantime, there's a right way and wrong way of handling yourself, and I have a strong conviction, personally, I have a strong conviction that part of my job when guys come in is to help educate them how, in the cyberspace world that we live in, you know, you have to be accountable for everything you say. And I think that, you know, obviously the game has changed, you know, and I think that they actually appreciate it more once they realize that you're actually doing it for their protection, not to stifle their personality.
But have you been pleased? I mean, you had those JUCOs that weren't here in the summer, in June and July, you know, Isaiah Johnson, Rodriguez, those guys that came a little late. You always wonder how they're going to come in, what kind of shape they're going to come in.
Well,
pleased with that?
let's use those two guys, for example.
Sure.
Okay, Okay, so Isaiah, the first time he took the condition test, didn't pass the conditioning test. This morning at 6 o'clock, he passed the conditioning test. So, whereas Rod, he could have run the conditioning test again after he ran the conditioning test. Okay, I mean, Rod is, stock is way up, on Rod. And as you all know, we needed somebody at the receiver position to be able to say something like that about. But once again, if we're rating players on the team, and people talk about wide receivers, everyone will bring up Coleman. And it's Rodriguez. Okay, let's make sure he doesn't like being called Rod. Just like Fondle is Fondal. Okay, so, sometimes you have to learn as you go along.
With so many new players and kind of, it's not year one, but is it year 1.1? I mean, do you almost feel like kind of starting over with bringing in so many new guys?
I think that it's really important for the coaches not to overcoach. Okay, and what I mean by that is not to try to put in so much stuff that these guys don't have a chance to catch on. Because the more you have to think, the slower you play. I think that our team will be ready for September 7th. But I think that the installation will just grow as the year goes on, because it's important that your guys know what to do. In the past, the coaches, you just sort of say, oh, we're gonna run this, that, and the other thing, and guess what? They can't handle it. And so you have to change rather than them change. You have to be astute to what they can handle and what they can't handle, and then tweak your installation accordingly.
To that point, can you do enough with your new style of defense and having those three coaches down on the field? Can you do enough in practice to feel like by game one or week one that's going to be pretty smooth? Or
Yes.
Yeah.
As a matter of fact, we're getting through this Saturday, and then really we're going to take, starting next week, which is really a transition week for us. Next week, like one of the things we'll do next week is run 2 huddles of offense against 1 defense. And this will be a defensive period, not an offensive period. But like an offense will go to the line of scrimmage and they'll run a play, and as soon as they're done, 11 guys will be on the ball to get ready to stop the next one. Okay, it'll be kind of a conditioning period for the offense, because they'll be running on and off the field the whole time. But the whole deal is to be able to let the offensive players know what they're supposed to do on the play for the defense, and be able to practice it at such a high tempo where the players get lined up and they're ready to go. Now, I've never had to do that before. I've never done it before. But imagine trying to get a show team to simulate tempo and give you a look at the same time. I mean, it's the Bad News Bears reincarnated, so this is we've had to do a lot of thinking. How do you do this? How do you practice it? And that's, it's gonna kind of be comical to watch, to be perfectly honest with you. Because I'm not in charge of this stuff now. I'm just gonna sit back and watch it flow. But it was my idea. So I said the only way we can kind of simulate tempo is by using a whole another 11 guys every other play. And so like one team's in, the other team's looking at the card for the next play, and as soon as that boom, they're to the line of scrimmage, and now they're ready to go. So now you can snap a ball in 10 to 15 seconds. Maybe that's what Art does down in, maybe that's what they're doing at Baylor. Maybe they're just holding the card up, here's the next play, because I have no idea how to do it. I'm not that smart. I really am. I'm not that smart.
But the idea is that is to try to help the defense get used to the.
That's the whole thought methodology. Now, I've never done that before. Okay, but that's what, that's the nature of the game right now. Okay, and it's the only way we can give a realistic look to the defense, both by execution of the play and the tempo of the play. So that's one of the things that we're gonna do for the first time. We'll probably do it for the first time Sunday, and it'll probably be pretty funny to watch, because practicing just to be able to do it is gonna take some work. It's not that, just the show team is gonna take some work. Forget about the defense, just to be able to get it. But once we get it, I think all it'll do is benefit the defense greatly, because now it won't become as much of a fire drill when they're actually playing in the games and people are trying to snap the ball, at a very high tempo.
Coach, you expressed during spring ball a little bit of disappointment in Ben Haney's performance. You said that he turned it around a bit, and has that, what's his performance been like so far?
Yeah.
And how does the new defense change his role?
I have no concerns with Ben at this point. I think Ben is ready to go. He looks like a caveman, okay, but he's ready to go. I might institute a cut your beard policy here before too long, but I really have no concerns, and there's no doubt that he'll be one of the main factors in not only performance but of leadership for our defense. I've been very pleased.
Now that you're practicing pads, what's your philosophy on live hitting and contact in each practice? How physical do you want it to be versus making sure guys are
Well,
healthy?
like today, this morning, we had four major periods. 2 of them were thud and 2 of them were full speed. So thud means don't cut on offense and don't take them to the ground on defense. Now, people end up getting knocked to the ground some. It isn't like you never go to the ground, but the idea is don't take them to the ground in those periods. But you can't practice tackling without going full speed. You can't practice cutting without going full speed. In the past, I never would cut. But then you end up being the worst cutting team in America. And, that's part of what you do. It's a big disadvantage to offensive players before they're allowed to cut. It's just think about a blitzing linebacker that all they're doing is bull rushing you, just trying to knock you over. Well, the easiest way to end that is cut their legs a couple times. Then all of a sudden that rush isn't nearly as hard because they're afraid that you're going to go cut their legs. But until you go full speed and don't let them do that, it's a big advantage to the defense.
We're going to be talking to Tim and his guys later today. We're going to talk about the running game. We always mentioned the running backs, but on the offensive line, there are some departures from last year. Where's that unit at?
Well, I think the thing, let's start with the fact that I've been very, very pleased with the competition, the competition at the position, where we've been rolling through 3 lines, and there's been 2 lines that I think have really been, it's a question, are the 3s competing with the 2s, or are the 2s competing with the 1s? And sometimes you don't know which way it's gonna go. But right now, I have a lot of the 2s competing with the 1s, which is good. Some of them are fading out of that mix. So if you go to a game, you might say, well, do you have 10 linemen you can play? Yeah, but you'd only play 7 of them, or you'd only play 8 of them. It all depends on who's playing really well. For example, I'll give you an example. Randall Dent's running the second team guard. Well, those 2 guys ahead of him are playing really good at guard. I mean, Malo and Smithburg are playing really good. So right now, we can't beat them out. But I'll tell you what, if we're going to the game, I would be ready to play Randall Dent at either guard because his level is this far below the first 2 guys. Okay, and I'm just citing that as an example to go with what you're talking about.
Coach, you talked to some of the guys in media day, there's a lot of emphasis about last year, the passing game struggled. But it seemed like it affected the entire team because obviously you only had the running game, but it also put a lot of pressure on the defense because they knew you guys couldn't afford to fall behind. How important is the passing game this year, just kind of letting the whole team know that we've kind of got a full package?
Well, I'm going to address briefly the first part of that, and then I'll answer the second part. I think that there's 2 ways of looking at that, with the running game being the only thing you have going. Another thing you had is you didn't have any toughness. And one thing the team grew by the end of the year is they were confident they could run the ball against anybody. So even though you have a crummy record, okay, you walk out of there saying, what were we good? What did we attain? What did we get any better at? And one thing you could say, there wasn't anyone on the team that thought that we couldn't run the ball, and there weren't any fans either that thought we couldn't run the ball. Okay, but at the end of the day, usually in football theory, you use the run to set up the pass. Okay, okay? And I think in our team, I mean, because we've become a good running team, okay, the run really, the pass will really set up the run, will protect the run. Okay, it'll be just the opposite in football theory because of what we did last year, bagging the passing game and putting all our energy into the running game. The residuals now come. I'm going to game plan us right now. The first thing I'm worried about, let's make sure we stop the run. Well, guess what? To stop the run, that makes it easier to throw the ball. So I think we've gotten, the investment we put in last year in the running game will pay dividends this year because now the passing game will help protect the running game. It's just really the opposite mentality of the way you normally think about it when you're talking about play action pass and all that.
Last year, at this time, you were pretty high on James Sims. Where can he get better, and how has he performed at this point in camp?
Well, the best thing that I like about James Sims is with all these running backs, he's still clearly number one. Okay, and remember now, the guy who came in used to be ahead of him. Okay, and those other guys that were behind him, they're pretty good too. So James could have gone a lot of different ways coming into this camp. He could have felt the heat, he could have felt the pressure, and then all of a sudden somebody slipped by him. But all he's done, not only has he competed, but I mean, he's playing really well. I mean, he's tough, he has good vision, you know, it's important to him. He's good enough in the pass game, okay, he's good in blitz pickup. I mean, he's playing pretty good. Each one of these guys has their thing. I mean, like James will never be as quick as Darian. That's never happened. Okay, but you know, he's a pretty complete player.
Coach, how's battle at special teams going?
Well, which element? We have so many elements to discuss, John. Where would you like to start?
Kick return, punt return, place kick.
I think that, first of all, kick return you don't get to use very often. Well, our teams, we've covered plenty of kicks. Okay, but, you know, there's more touchbacks than there are, you know, there's a lot of touchbacks in college football now. I think kick return, we've only practiced at full speed once, so we'll reserve judgment till after we've gone through another time, although we're rolling through 6 returners that are all in the mix to be there, and that's Holden, Tony, and a couple of guys that we know we could put back there at any time. You know, we're trying not to use a guy like him as a kick returner unless we have to. If we needed a big one, you know, still the most dynamic guy we would have would be Tony. You know, but right now I would try to do my best to not use Tony. Okay, punt returner, once again, we're using 3 or 4 guys. But, you know, we're hitting that for the second time coming up here too. So I'd like to have at least gone, you know, with pads on, you know, a couple times before I make a judgment on exactly where we are on those. Any other special teams, things while we're on special teams? I think that right now, you know, some guys have had good days and bad days. Like, you know, Nash, we all know we're waiting to see with him. Like yesterday, he was 5 for 5. Yesterday. The day before he wasn't 5 for 5, but yesterday he was 5 for 5. You know, so you just go and you keep evaluating. You know, he's got a pretty consistent leg. Still, the biggest leg on the team is not close. I mean, if it came down, you had to kick a 52-yard. Like today in practice, we kicked a 52-yarder with Perdue. I mean, for him, 52 yards wasn't a big hit. You know, for us, you know, making a 40-yarder used to be a big hit. You know, so I could possibly see using a shorter field goal kicker and a longer field goal kicker. I could possibly see that. I could see that as a potential, but we'll just wait and see how it plays out.
Charlie, with a guy like Pierce Slater who commits in July and signs one of those non-binding financial aid agreements, are you basically recruiting those guys until they get on the campus?
How about till the morning he arrived? You know, that, yeah, I'm not gonna really go into that, but if you ever knew that story, I could, at least a chapter could just be just that story. mean, it's at least a chapter long. I mean, it's a long story, but I was very happy to see the big man walk on campus, that's all I can tell you. But at the end of the day, you know, you sign a grant aid, there are things that are advantage Kansas. Meaning, we now, once you sign a grant aid, can communicate. You can call, you can text, where no other school can, but once a week. Okay, so you do have a better lines of communication than any other school. Once they've signed a letter of intent and a grant aid, they're done. But if they sign just a grant aid, which in this case, you couldn't sign a letter of intent, you only could sign a grant aid, and you still had to have, you know, keep on recruiting, which I don't really consider that just recruiting. I consider that building relationships. And we still had to do that anyway, because once a guy is ours, he's ours for good. So you want to build relationships with him, his mom, and the people around him, you know, that's important.
Coach, you said you met with Andy Reid last week or 2 weeks ago, and he's going through his own rebuilding process with the Chiefs. Did you guys see any similarities in your positions and talk about that at all?
We usually talk about family. We don't talk much about football. You know, what he did do is he went back and watched the way, you know, what I did with Jamal, what I did with Dexter, and some of those guys when I was there. But you know, we're very close friends. Football is not really the head of our, you know, our hit list of things we talked about. And he told me about our play. He talked about Bradley. He talked about Tobin. They kind of like both of those guys, and you know, there's a chance that both of those guys could be around in some capacity, Tobin included. And we talked about Bradley, but I mean, there's a chance that if they made the team, they both would have a chance of making a practice squad, which that's six figures. That's, you know, that's good stuff that ends up happening. But you know, we talked about Fasano because I coached him when I was at Notre Dame. And we talked about Frankie Hammond because I coached him when I was at Florida. You know, so it was fun. But really, for the most part, you know, I got there early that day, so we could spend a couple hours really catching up on family. That's really what we usually talk about.
You talked last week about Jake carrying over what he's done. Has he done that? And then could you talk quarterback position as a whole?
He's done that, and I'd say Michael has been very, I wouldn't call it a pleasant surprise, but Michael's had a really good camp. You know, I didn't know whether Michael would be competing to be number 3 or competing to be number 1. I didn't know which way that would go, but he's competing to be number 1, which that's a good thing, you know, because the easy thing to do in Michael's position is just say, well, if Jake's playing better than me, I'm never going to get a chance, and that's not what he's doing. He's trying to beat him out. So not only has Jake played well, but Michael playing well has put some heat on Jake. And I think that anytime you have heat, you know, as far as depth charts goes, it's a good thing. I think it's a good thing.
Is there a time, I mean, that you'll want to settle that competition?
Oh, no, Jake is one, and Michael's two.
Right.
Listen, but the question, I'm getting Michael ready to play.
Okay.
I think that I'm not getting Michael ready to be the backup. I'm getting Michael ready to play. That's what you do in training camp. You get them both ready to play. You know, and then we wait and see how it goes. I mean, I can talk about Montel and Jordan too. I mean, you know, Montel might be playing as good as anybody. But you just don't, you can't give everyone, you know, when you have 24 snaps in a period, you can't give everyone, you know, equal number of snaps. It just doesn't work that way.
What's Jake's intangibles, leadership, game study, that kind of,
Well, that's probably his greatest attribute, to be honest with you. Arms and intangibles, probably his greatest attribute. You know, that's just, you know, at the quarterback position, you know, just as important as accuracy being the #1 physical attribute, the biggest attribute of the quarterback position is leadership. By far, it's more important than anything. Put it like this, even if you're accurate, if you're not a leader, no one's going to want to play for you. That's probably more important than anything.
Coach, can you talk a little bit about the battle at the linebacker position, specifically on that weak side?
Well, I think that those two guys at will have played so good that I could see those guys, one of those guys rotating in and out of Mike linebacker too. I could see that happening. Now, the thing is, you have two different, because Samson's playing really good and Jake's playing really good. So what you end up doing then is one of them is gonna end up getting cross-trained. Right now, we haven't gotten to that point yet, but I don't know which one will end up being. But, you know, they're both, they're 1 and 1A, you know, those two guys. You know, he's clearly the starter at Mike, but I think that if the best other inside linebacker, let's say Jake is the starter and Samson's the backup. Okay, well, if Samson's better than Skyler, then, you know, somebody, either Jake or Samson, is gonna have to get cross-trained with Mike. And right now, we've been very happy, you know, with that competition at will. And we haven't been disappointed with Prince Candy either, to tell you the truth. You know, but he just hasn't played as good as those other two guys.
Charlie, getting back to Jason, we can see kind of those intangibles when we talk to him and the leadership, but I'm wondering, when he came in last year, do you think he almost needed a year off to kind of recharge and maybe rebuild himself, maybe from a confidence standpoint? I mean, did you guys work on that last year as well?
One thing I told him, you know, well, one conversation, let's just say, from my background, I remember having a conversation with Bill Sims one time, my second year at the NFL. Phil had been the starting quarterback with the Giants forever. Okay, and then he got hurt after the 11th game of the season, or whatever, when we were like 10-1. And Hostetler came in, and we ended up winning the Super Bowl with Hostetler as the quarterback. So then Parcells leaves, and the next year, you know, in training camp, they end up picking Hostetler to be the starting quarterback. Okay, now I'm coaching the running back, but my vote really didn't have, I didn't have much of a vote because I just flipped from being a defensive guy to an offensive guy that year. You know, and the reason why I spent a lot of times with the quarterbacks is because I was the offensive signal caller. And I said to him, you know, we were struggling there early in the year, but I think the team went like 8-8. But Sims had said to me, he goes, you can't lead you can't lead the team when you're not playing. He goes, you just have to bide your time to when you are playing. And I really think that's what Jake just went through. You know, Jake was probably, arguably, maybe easily our best quarterback last year, but he couldn't play. So you can't be a leader, you know, you can't be a true leader when you're not playing at the quarterback position. I think he was just chomping at the bit, you know, just waiting. I mean, he couldn't wait for that plane. I'm surprised he didn't meet us at the plane after the West Virginia game, because now it become his time to really be back in the mix. And I think that gave him an opportunity to kind of step up and step forward and, you know, and be able to open his mouth as not just as a teammate, but now as a guy who is willing and able to accept a leadership role.
You mentioned Brandon Bourbon, you got Tony Pearson that, I guess, playing Tavon at Austin Borough or whatever. How excited are you with Jake and the running game and those guys, what that position can do?
It's giving us a lot of flexibility. It's, you know, because those two guys, Tony and Brandon, can do a lot of things. And because they can, see, we didn't know for sure that Brandon could. You know, that was me, like, I wouldn't say it was a hunch, but that was just me trying to take a guy that I thought gave us the best chance other than Tony. So because those guys are smart and they're versatile, and they can both run the ball very well, but they can catch the ball very well, it allows us to do some things that last year we just weren't capable of doing.
As far as what Colin Spencer's learning from those guys and at that position, I mean, is he learning a little bit from each guy, or is he more Tony or more Brandon?
I'd say he's more Tony, just by girth alone,
Sure.
just by side alone. But, you know, it's a little different being a freshman,
Yeah.
you know, than
Coach, how much better is the defensive line just from a physical standpoint this year with all those bodies in there and just the whole depth?
Well, I'll just say that Buddy White told me this morning, thank you for talking him off the ledge. Okay, because he said, I was on that ledge ready to jump the first year, you know, and now he goes, it's nice to be able to come out to practice and walk through the stretch line and say, okay, I get some guys to put in there now. I mean, we were awful. And we were awful at many positions, okay? We were awful. We were awful at head coach, in case you're wondering, but, you know, so I'm trying to improve. And, you know, to be perfectly honest with you, it perks you up as the defensive line coach, you know, the rest of the defensive coaches and the head coach, to see some guys with athletic ability, and then being able to go 2 and 3 deep, you know, and put guys in and don't see a huge drastic drop-off from one to the next. You know, it's very encouraging.
Coach, can you talk about the tweaks in the rules and in regarding the extent that they're protecting the receivers over the middle? As an offensive mind, do you game plan with that on how much, I guess, peace of mind they can have over the middle?
Well, we actually watched a video from the Big 12 just a couple days ago, the first day in pads, you know, at our team meeting that morning. The Big 12 sends you all these videos that, you know, they don't know what you do with them, but I actually copied them off and showed them to the players to show what they were calling. And then you know, a couple guys that were in practice saw it. Then we actually went out and I had Coach Bowen and a couple of players demonstrate what the rules were, not only to protect you, to not get a penalty, but to not get a concussion. You know, so I think that we all know that concussions are a big reason why these rules have come into play. You know, most head injuries have become a major issue. And not that they weren't a major issue, but they've really become a major issue. And I think that you have to spend the time both by showing them on video and showing them on the field the right and wrong way to do it.
Keon said he actually went home and downloaded a whole bunch of these songs. And some of these guys
They're actually starting to sing the words. It's taking them a little time, you know, it's taking them a little time, but I'm very pleased that, you know, I can hear the choruses for It's My Life and Living on a Prayer, and, you know, it only took them a year, but, you know, they kind of figured out to roll with it. I've made them cut down from 2 songs to 1 song. I only get 1, and I don't get to pick it. But if it's not one of the ones I like, I make sure they know at the practice that I really